Bears head coaching search just got accelerated. We talk about that next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
I'm going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Make sure to like and subscribe if you are out there on YouTube. And also, make sure to download the podcast. Ever you get your podcast, just search for Unbearable Sports on Spotify, Apple Music, you name it. What's going on? Hope you're all having an amazing weekend. We have some playoff football. The national championship is tomorrow. It's a great weekend. So also, we got some news that is going to make this week very fun. We're going to have a lot of news coming out about that Bears head coaching search, and that's because the Lions lost. And now, as soon as they were going to lose, we saw some news just immediately get fired off by one Jay Glazer. So the big news of last night was that the Bears are going to be interviewing Tennessee State head coach Eddie George, former running back for the Tennessee Titans. And I feel like some people out there were like, why are they interviewing him? Well, unfortunately, it is to satisfy the Rooney Rule. If you really look at this, they're bringing him in person to satisfy the Rooney Rule. So then after that, what that means is after they interview Eddie George in person, that means they can then hire a head coach, any head coach that they end up interviewing and talking to coming up. So they want to get that out of the way. It means that the Bears are like, oh man, the Lions just lost. Now we can start to try and bring in Ben Johnson on Monday and try to just get this show on the road. Now, the only other thing I want to just kind of talk about with Eddie George is Eddie George is actually familiar with the Bears organization. He's met with them in some offseason programs. He's been around the area. So, is he going to be the head coach? No. There's definitely a Rooney Rule. It smells like the Rooney Rule, similar to what the Patriots were doing in order to hire Mike Vrabel. Unfortunately, that's the way things are going. But with Eddie George, maybe he comes in as an assistant or something like that. Who knows? He's probably not, but just something to at least look out for, at least. So let's talk about this whole Lions situation. Because like we said, when the Lions lost, it then made the Bears speed up. They go, oh crap, we got to bring in someone. We need to satisfy this rule because Ben Johnson can interview as early as Monday. So if you're the Bears, bring in the private jet, right? We see what they were doing with Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy actually requested to meet in person. So the Bears seemingly, he wanted to be met. The Bears wanted to bring him in virtually. He goes, no, bring me in. Bears wined and dined Mike McCarthy. So let's do the same thing with Ben Johnson. Take him everywhere. No meal, nothing is too expensive to bring in Ben Johnson because even last night, you see the innovation and everything. He's still the prize possession that we need to go and grab. So hopefully Monday morning, we hear that the Bears are going to be talking to him. We'll see who meets with him first, whether it's the Raiders or the Bears, or still the Jaguars are still in the hunt technically. But also just want to kind of bring up the latest ratings. Right now, it's Raiders, Bears. Raiders and Bears are kind of neck and neck. Plus 125 odds for the Raiders and plus 150 odds for the Bears. So basically neck and neck for who is going to get Ben Johnson. But also the Jacksonville Jaguars are in there at plus 225. My take, I still feel like the Jaguars are not an actual contender with just what's going on in their organization. It really does feel like it's going to be the Raiders and Bears get whoever is left. But hey, Adam Schefter was asked about this and he said, hey, there's insiders out there that assume that Ben Johnson's going to the Raiders, but look at what the Bears have. And just kind of was saying it's still up to basically the Raiders, Bears. He did throw in the Jaguars as well. So it's not completely lost hope. And also the other piece that was kind of thrown around there, Rick Smith, Ben Johnson's agent, graduated from University of Illinois and Northwestern University, also resides in Highland Park. So big Chicago Bears fan as well. Maybe, hopefully he can convince Ben Johnson to save his favorite franchise from extinction and hopefully bring us up. So that is something to also just look out for. So be on the lookout for when the Bears are going to bring him in. It's most likely going to be tomorrow and see who brings him in first. Is it going to be the Raiders? Is it going to be the Bears? But it's going to be a jam-packed week because, hey, they might just want to he's going to be the next domino. There was Vrabel to say, hey, is Vrabel actually going to go to the Patriots? Ben Johnson is the next gem of this head coaching draft, head coaching free agency, so to speak. So after he's gone, then everything else is just going to be wide open. And speaking of that, it has been reported on Colin Cowherd from Jordan Schultz that the Bears head coaching race is a 2-horse race among Ben Johnson and also Mike McCarthy. He reported that, hey, to him, it's just those two. And he said, hey, unless someone like a Brian Flores were to impress him, then maybe he gets into the list. So it does kind of feel that way too, that the Bears really do like Mike McCarthy as a potential head coach, someone who's done it before, also offensive minded. It does feel like the Bears are leaning Mike McCarthy if they can't get Ben Johnson. But it was also interesting too that he did say, hey, Brian Flores is also another potential option. Another thing that I want to bring up too is that when we start talking about Ben Johnson, about the race to Ben Johnson, the Raiders also interviewed a former Lions executive and current Commanders assistant GM, Lance Newmark, as you know, and a lot of people kind of raised their ears up to say, hey, here's someone that is from the Lions organization, might also know Ben Johnson. Maybe Ben Johnson really likes him. This could be a move that they make to say, hey, Ben, look, we got your guy. We got your assistant GM. We really like him. So that's why it still does feel, even though that Schefter's like, hey, it might not happen, it does feel like he's going to go to the Raiders. Now, I do also know too that Danny Parkins mentioned this too, saying, hey, look at the Raiders, look at the Bears. Why would he want to go to the Raiders? And then the Raiders fans instantly go, we're better at this, we're better at this, we're better at this. But it is a good point, because if you really liked Caleb Williams and you really wanted to coach Caleb Williams, you could do that. And Caleb Williams is better than any other prospect, that's any quarterback prospect that is coming out this year. So if Ben Johnson, it's a solid point that, like, hey, the Bears do have a lot of stuff in place that they can build upon. And it already feels like they're kind of out more of that rebuild phase, or we should be out of that rebuild phase. We've just been kind of permanently stuck in that. So maybe, yet again, I think that the Bears job is more attractive than the Raiders job, but only time will tell to see what Ben Johnson thinks about that. So let's go to the next piece, which is Mike Tomlin. So kind of closing the book on Ben Johnson and all that stuff. Let's talk a little bit about Mike Tomlin, which we've talked about on this show, that I thought that the Bears are going to have a lot of interest in Mike Tomlin. And reportedly, the Bears did. The Bears actually called up the Steelers, as reported by Adam Schefter, but the Steelers basically said, no, not going to happen. There was also more other reports from Mike Tomlin when Mike was asked about, hey, are you going to be leaving the Steelers? And was like, yep, there's no chance. There's no chance I'm leaving the Steelers. So, hey, I'm at least happy that the Bears asked and talked to the Steelers about Mike Tomlin. They did the work of at least making a call and saying, hey, are you guys even interested in moving on from Mike Tomlin? So good on the Bears to at least do that. The other piece that this also brought up, because I know there's questions about how much are the McCaskies willing to spend on a head coach. Now, Mike Tomlin is one of the highest paid head coaches in all of the league at about $16 million. And there's also, you know, I don't want to say reports. I think that it's more of rumors out there that Ben Johnson is looking for a very large deal. Now, with the Bears seemingly saying, hey, we'll trade for Mike Tomlin, it does kind of confirm the fact that the Bears do have open pocketbooks to try to get it right at this head coaching spot to say, hey, you know what, if we could get Tomlin and pay that $16 million, then awesome. So it just confirms more of like what we were already kind of saying on the show and already kind of feeling about everything going on. But then the last little bit that I just want to talk about, Ian Cunningham, someone that I was thinking was going to go to the Titans job. It felt like that he should, but ultimately Mike Borgonzi ends up going to the Tennessee Titans job. Still doesn't mean that Ian Cunningham is completely in the clear, that he might not go somewhere else, but it does feel more like with that job closing that maybe he's not going to get another opportunity, something just to kind of listen and look out for. But you know, we're going to have you covered with all the different updates that are going out there too. As I go through my notes, the only other piece that I want to just bring up in the head coaching search, supposedly, as reported by Kaplan from ESPN 1000. Dave Kaplan was saying that Todd Monken's interview, supposedly pretty good. That's the offensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens. And also, last little bit that I just want to close out on is that there's only 2 coaches that the Bears have not interviewed yet that they've requested interviews from, and that's Cliff Kingsbury and Marcus Freeman. Both 2 people that I've kind of doubt that they actually take the interview with the Bears. Marcus Freeman has said, hey, I've had a lot of individual success, so it does feel like, I still feel like Freeman's not going to be an actual candidate, and Cliff probably is not going to want to move on from the Commanders, but it's still something that we will be keeping you covered and let you know what happens next. So if you're still out there on YouTube, make sure to hit like, comment who you think the Bears are going to get. Is it going to be Ben Johnson? Because, hey, I'd love that to happen. And also, if you're listening, make sure to rate 5 stars. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a bride.